guys, long time no sit down video. I haven't done a sit down video in so long, and I'm so excited because today we have one of my favorite videos to watch and to film, and that's going to be my August reading wrap up. I love these videos. I love talking about books, sharing my opinions on books, conveying how I feel and kind of reviewing, and then also like I love watching them because I love to get book suggestions, kind of see if there's like books that I have read that these people have read and how they feel about it, and if it's similar or if I can get a different perspective on the book. I just love it. I love reading, and I just love anything to do with books, especially talking about it, because I am a yapper, guys. I am a yapper. So today I have a handy dandy book journal here, and I wrote down all my reviews and stuff of it so far. And this month I read a whopping 9 books, which is nothing crazy for me. I think my reading goal for the whole year, like my Goodreads reading goal, is 120 books. I didn't want to go too crazy, but I also wanted to keep it, like, for me, realistic. I feel like I do read quite a bit, and it is one of my favorite hobbies, so I just kind of wanted to have like a good goal, because I feel like I haven't really had like a strict goal for the past couple years, and I kind of just, I needed that. I need that structure. So I'm coming in around, I want to say 87 books right now, so I'm like 1 book ahead of schedule, and I'm excited. I'm excited to read some more. I'm hoping to have a bunch more good reads for September. I'm so excited. I can't believe that August is over though. Like, what? Let's start with the first book I read, which I don't have all of these books physically, but I do have some, and I did kind of make do with what I had. Okay, so we're just gonna go along with it. Okay, this is the stack of physical books that I have. Obviously there's only 5 here. Some of them I listened to on audio, and we'll get into all that. But the first book we're starting off with is The Palace of Eros by Caro de Robertis. This was an ARC that I got at a book sale. It actually just came out on August 13th. So if you guys haven't picked this book up yet, you should. I honestly would really suggest this book, even though I did give it a 3 stars. This book, I think going into it, I was so excited, and I kind of had these ideals based off of like other Greek mythological fiction books I've read, based off of like The Palace of Achilles, or no, The Song of Achilles, which was one of my favorite fiction Greek mythological books that I've read recently, and I feel like it did kind of have very similar topics, but it definitely was not the same. It definitely didn't have quite the same execution, but I do feel like they are similar. So if you did read The Song of Achilles and you like that book, I would suggest this one. It just wasn't quite the same, and I think maybe because I was kind of like comparing it to that. Not comparing it, I wouldn't say like I was like, oh my gosh, why isn't it exactly like The Song of Achilles? And I wasn't thinking about it all the time, but I just think that I kind of had like my preconceived idea of how I wanted it to go, and it just wasn't quite like that, but it was still very good. This book follows a human named Psyche, who is just a young girl living in a village during this period of time. She's human, and her sisters are basically trying, they're like a little bit older than her. She is the youngest. They're trying to find suitors. Their dad is trying to set them up with different men, as you did in that time. And Psyche is the youngest. She's kind of like hidden away in a way, like they kind of just like don't want her in that at all, because they are obviously trying to get their oldest daughters married off before the youngest one, because that's just kind of how it is during that time. Like, she ends up stumbling into the room when these suitors are here, and all of these men see her, and the word kind of gets out that she's like one of the most beautiful girls ever. Her beauty rivals Aphrodite. Aphrodite ends up hearing about this, and she gets super mad, and she basically sets this like plague or drought onto this village, and says like basically you need to send this girl off to like live this horrible life with this ogre of a man, and like just get her like so that no one ever like sees or hears about her again. Basically Aphrodite is just being vain, and she's a god. She just wants to be the best, you know, and she doesn't want to be compared to a human. So she sends her daughter Eros out to basically do the job of getting rid of this girl, but Eros ends up meeting Psyche, and they end up falling in love, and she ends up whisking her away to this palace and essentially telling Aphrodite that she's gone and that the problem is taken care of, and that she'll never have to like deal with this again. Meanwhile, she's going every night, and she's meeting Psyche, but Psyche doesn't know who she is or what she is. She thinks she's a human, but she's like, you can never see me, you can never ask who I am, like these are the conditions of you being here, we can be together. And this is Psyche's first time being with a woman, so it is very, you know, this different experience, and it kind of covers all of these very sapphic topics. I will say that the biggest thing that I didn't like about this book is that going into it, I just didn't realize that like a lot of their moments together are very sexualized. I feel like a lot of it is very kind of like smutty, very graphic, and there's no problem with that. I think that some people would really enjoy that. I'm just not really like a smutty reader, or I just don't really enjoy that part. I want it to be like, if I'm reading a romance, I want it to be like cute, kind of like realistic romantic things. I'm not really much of a smut person. That's me personally. If you enjoy that, you should read this book. But I just feel like it kind of like, for me, I was so excited for the plot. Not even necessarily the romance of it. I was excited for the plot of the Greek mythological part of it, and I feel like that kind of took away from the book for me, that so much of it was just they're meeting at night and doing the deed, and like that was kind of the extent of it for a while. So it wasn't my favorite, but I would still recommend the book if you like that kind of. The next book I read I don't have, but it was a mystery thriller called Never Let You Go by Chevy Stevens. I love Chevy Stevens. I've read a ton of her books. I just love the story building. I feel like it focuses on the characters a lot, but in a good way. Like, a lot of her books are very trauma built though. This book in particular deals a lot with domestic violence. There were very heavy detail on that, so I would say reading any of her books, I would say, at least the ones that I've read, I would check trigger warnings for sure. And yeah, I enjoyed this book. I liked it a lot. I gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. Do I think it was my favorite book of hers ever? No. I didn't particularly like the ending, I don't think. It follows a woman who has a daughter who is in, it kind of follows this past and present storyline about a woman who was in an extremely abusive relationship, and her husband ends up going to prison, and it kind of follows their past, and then their present, where she's living with her daughter in this new town, and she's kind of feels like she's escaped him and their life and everything, and then she ends up being like stalked by someone, and she thinks that it's him because he's just gotten out of prison, and she's kind of trying to figure out what's going on with her daughter. Her daughter's acting very suspicious, and it has a bunch of other characters in it too, and it just kind of follows like her trying to figure out what's going on. There's a lot of very suspicious characters, and I ended up figuring out the plot twist like a little bit before it happened. I feel like it was kind of predictable, and it was also like trying to be unpredictably predictable. I don't know. It wasn't my favorite, I won't say, but I did enjoy it still. I just enjoy her story, and like, I love character-driven books, so I enjoy these, and I also love mystery thrillers, so I really like this one. I would suggest it. The next book I read, I actually don't even want to talk about this one because I know that a lot of people are going to have very differing reviews from me, but I did read Butcher and Blackbird, and I listened to it on audiobook actually. I don't know if that affected my rating at all, but I gave it a 2.5 stars. I did not really like this book. I know that it is meant to be a dark, cannibalistic romance, kind of like dark, and I thought I was gonna like it. I love true crime, so I thought that like I love true crime podcasts and books and mystery thrillers. I thought that I was gonna like it, and I thought that it was gonna be fun to like bring that romance to the like true crime kind of mystery-ish sort of thing. It felt a little bit juvenile to me. I didn't really get the chemistry between the two main characters, and I just feel like, I don't know if I wasn't in a romance mood. I don't know if it was the book itself. I don't know if it was the characters. It felt a little bit like cliche, juvenile. I did like some of the nicknames. I did like their nicknames for each other, and I did kind of like their relationship a little bit. Like, some of the things that they did were really cute, but I just felt like some of it was just like, I was just losing the plot a little bit as I was reading it, and I kind of just wanted it to be over. So I know a lot of people love this book though, so I will say I do suggest this book, because I know I suggest any book, even if I don't like it, unless it's like really bad and it's like what I would say is like very, very controversial and like I don't agree with it, then I would say don't read it, or I wouldn't think someone should read it. But I think that everybody should give any book an opportunity, because they might really like it. Obviously, a ton of people love this book and I don't, so anybody can have any opinion on it, but that's my 2 cents. I'm glad I read it because I've been wanting to read it for a while, but I'm also glad that I listened on audio and didn't purchase it. So I've actually been reading for a while. It's called Being Mortal by Atul Gawande. I feel like I've talked about this in maybe another video even. This book is a nonfiction book. It is a book about medicine and what matters in the end. This book kind of talks a lot differently than I thought it would. I gave it a 3.5 stars. I feel like it just wasn't quite what I was expecting. I thought it was going to be more informative, kind of, about disease and modern medicine and how maybe a more holistic outlook would be better, or just something like that. This one was a little bit more about like the mental of it, and how maybe the best thing is like towards the end, instead of like giving your life away to medicine, instead of just like living towards the end of your life, and how different medicine is from how it used to be, or how it is like Eastern medicine compared to Western medicine, which I still do think that this was really good, but I feel like it had a lot more of like accounts of people in like nursing homes and stuff than I thought it was going to. So it was just still good, but different than what I was expecting from it. So I would still suggest this. I'm probably gonna have my mom read it because she likes this kind of stuff, but yeah, I like this one. It was pretty good. Just, you know, kind of what it says it is. The next book I read was actually Good Girl, Bad Blood, the second book in a Good Girl's Guide to Murder series by Holly Jackson. I just bought the third book. This book, a 4 out of 5 stars. I really loved it. The first book I listened to on audio and I really liked that, but I do feel like maybe I got a little bit confused at certain parts because I was listening to it instead of like physically reading it, and I couldn't annotate and I couldn't like use my own voice for it. So I don't know. Sometimes I feel like certain books are really good on audio and like it doesn't really affect a rating for me, and sometimes I feel like it does. So I don't know if I would have enjoyed that one more physically, but did really enjoy. I feel like I enjoyed the main story more in the first book, but then I enjoyed like the other case that she follows in the second book, but I think that I enjoyed reading it physically more, so that experience of reading it physically really made it very enjoyable for me. I kind of didn't know if I was gonna like the series. I do think that it is very good. I just watched the Netflix series about it and I loved that, so I will highly suggest it, and I think that that has kind of helped me get more into it as well, because I feel like the casting for the series was really good. And I just really genuinely enjoyed this book. I think the second book was really good. Next book I read was A Novel Love Story by Ashley Poston. I gave this book a 2 stars. I honestly don't think that this book has been getting very good reviews. I was so excited for the plot of this book. Essentially, they started a book, her and her friends started a book club surrounding this one book series that is honestly like any book that like I feel like would be really good, that we would really enjoy if the author had made this book instead of the book that I read. It is based found family. It's a romance. It follows it's kind of like one of those where like it follows a standalone series kind of thing, so it follows like different couples and throughout different books, and each one it kind of has this community that it follows different characters in each book. But you don't really get a lot of like plot behind these books. You get the girl who is going to this bookish retreat. Her friend ends up canceling to do something else. She's like, I'm gonna go by myself. On her way there, she ends up driving through the town that is the book series, but it's like not actually a place. It's like she stumbled into this like magical realism kind of state. I don't even know. And I think because Ashley Poston has done this, if you haven't read The 7-Year Slip, it's kind of the same like magical realism. But so I feel like that was kind of expected, but it just didn't really flow the same because you didn't really understand these other characters. But she's talking about these characters like you should know them, but you don't. You don't know what's going on. It's very confusing. It's hard to keep track of the characters because there's a lot and they're all doing very different things that you don't quite understand because only she knows it. And she's like trying to explain it but not very well. And then you have the main guy who is a librarian. It's very like they're kind of like pushed together in a weird way, but they like, I don't really like a book where the main guy is like he's like very against and like doesn't like the girl, but she's like not liking him, but not really because she doesn't like him, just because he's being rude to her. I don't know, like I'm not a big fan of that. It wasn't even like grumpy sunshine, it was like grumpy naive and kind of like, I don't know, I just wasn't a big fan of the characters. I feel like their chemistry was not really there. It felt very weird, and especially towards the end everything got very polluted. I feel like it was very confusing. I was very confused the whole time trying to figure out like how she was in this place. Is this guy even real, or is he like part of this series? It was very strange. I'm not really gonna go into much more than that because I think that you should just read it if you want to read it. I've heard mixed reviews. People love it or they don't like it, and I'm on the more don't like it stance. But yeah, next book I read was Summer on the Bluffs by Sunny Hostin. This one I gave a 4 stars. I liked the storyline. It follows this woman who is a godmother to 3 different girls, and they're living in like the Martha's Vineyard kind of area. It's very summer-esque. It's very coastal town, beach vibes, and it's very character driven. It follows a lot with diversity and the Black community's struggles. I really liked this book. I really liked the family aspect. I loved the storyline. I loved following the different girls as the godmother is essentially like they would all come and visit this beach house throughout their childhood, and they have a bunch of different experiences, and it kind of follows that, and then it follows them as they're older and they're going through their own struggles and their own relationship with this godmother and how they're kind of like vying for her attention from different angles and different relationships, and through like grief and relationship struggles and just life in general. And they're all kind of essentially the godmother is going to give one of them the house once she gets a little bit older and like is giving the house away to one of them, and they're all kind of trying to like, they all kind of want the house. They're not really like fighting for it, but they do get kind of like angsty with each other, I will say. But they're all just essentially trying to figure out who's going to get the house. They all think it's the other one. I really like this book. I love I love character-driven stories, so I think that this book was very good. I don't really think that it like had a plot per se. I feel like it was mostly character-driven, but I did enjoy it. Next book I read was I'll Give You the Sun by Jandy Nelson. This book I got recently, and everyone was saying that they really liked it. I know it is an older book. I did enjoy this book. I gave it a 3 stars. It was kind of in between for me. I feel like at first when I was reading it, I was like, whoa, the writing is very strange. But as I got a little bit more into it, I was understanding it more and I was enjoying it. It basically follows these twins, Noah and Jude, who are like inseparable as children. And in the first part of the story, it follows them as they're like 13, 14 years old, and it follows Noah's perspective. And then when they're like 16, it follows Jude's perspective. And just as they kind of have different relationships and as they get older and their twin bond kind of separates a little bit, they go through something really tough and it kind of draws them away from each other, and how they kind of deal with getting older and grief in different ways. I enjoyed this book. I think that it had some really important topics, and I think that the writing style was very interesting. But it did feel a little bit like that like indie writing that's kind of like confusing. So at parts I was kind of like, okay, what's going on, what are we talking about, who's doing what timeline are we in. But I think that might have been like myself personally. I'm just not a big fan of that kind of writing sometimes. So overall, I think that this was a good story. It just didn't quite have the execution that I thought it was going to have. But that could just be my simple-minded brain. So like, take that with a grain of salt, because it could just be me. And then the last book I read, I actually just finished today because I needed to finish it in time for the end of the month. And that is Follow Me by Joanna Scott. This book I gave a 2.5 stars. I just kind of gotta be honest with you guys, I skimmed the end of this book. This book follows a girl who essentially is living in like this very small town as a girl, leaving the town and running away and going to live in these different places, and she kind of takes on these different aliases as she gets older and she goes to different places, she meets different people, and I love that. I loved the start of this book. I loved following her journey, and then as it went on, it just got very kind of confusing for me. It started to follow a different person's story kind of, and it kind of made sense, but also I was kind of confused, and I was like, oh, I don't really like where this turn that we're taking. I don't really know where I wanted it to go. I just kind of got tired of the concept that it was going with, and I lost interest very quickly as it changed perspectives. So I think that this book, I wouldn't say isn't a good read. I just wouldn't necessarily probably ever think of this book that much again. And I definitely will be giving this to someone who will like it and read it and enjoy it more than I probably will. Yeah, that's gonna be it for my August wrap up. I didn't have too many. I still managed to talk a lot for those few books that I read. But yeah, I'm excited for September. I'm hoping that I have some better reads. I made a TBR jar for this September wrap up, so I'm really, September TBR, so I am really excited, and I can't wait to share my new reads with you guys, and then we can have a September wrap up, and hopefully I have more than 3 and 2.5 star reviews. But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. I'm glad that we get to talk and have a little reading debrief with you guys, and yeah, I'll see you guys in my next one. Bye!